A successful business owner, investor, and philanthropist. In 2017, Paul founded the Child Liberation Foundation and has led or held a critical role in over 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries. Through this foundation and others that he has helped to start and fund, over 5,000 children have now been liberated. Paul is the primary investor and executive producer of the film The Sound of Freedom. The film highlights one of the largest child rescue missions in history, with over 120 victims being liberated, in which Paul himself held a pivotal role. Thank you very much for being with us, Paul. That is, it's really astounding. And you were saying that this movie highlights one of the great missions that I guess, you got to participate in some manner. Were you actually there, or?
Yes, in fact, in the movie, the producer of Sound of Freedom is Eduardo Verástegui. About halfway through the film, Jim Caviezel is talking to his wife, and he's like, the only way I can pull this off is if I can convince Pablo. Well, I'm Pablo. That's, the Mexican actor. He came as Pablo Delgado, the billion-dollar fund manager who decides to quit his job to go help rescue the children. So I was physically there. I got a phone call. I had already been helping the foundation, and I got a phone call from the Homeland Security agent, the one that Jim plays. And he said, Paul, I'm here in Cartagena. There's not just 20 children like we thought. There's more than 50 here. And there's more than 100 children in other trafficking rings in other cities, in Medellin, in Armenia, Colombia. He said, we believe we can rescue all 100 children on the same day at the same time. But I need your help if you're willing. And I said, well, how much do you need? I thought that he needed more money to do it. And he said, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? I'm like, me, he knew more about my background than most people. I have a special set of skills that makes me somewhat safe in a dangerous place. But more important than that, he said, Paul, the head trafficker down here has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needs a few $1 million to build it out. He believes he can make tens of millions of dollars a year selling children to wealthy Americans. And he said, the plan is this. He said, you fly down here and, as a wealthy investor, real estate investor, and you tell them, listen, I'm willing to take a look at your project under one condition. A couple weeks from now, I'm going to bring down a bunch of my buddies. We want to have a party. Now, our intel already told us that he had over 50 children throughout his network in that area. I said, so I'm going to bring my buddies down. We're going to have a party. You show up with the about 50 of the models that you have to work with. If I'm happy, then I'll consider your deal. Well, it worked like clockwork. 2 days later, I was in Colombia. I'm face to face with the most evil people you can imagine, and I'm sitting at this table. And halfway through the meeting, these guys, one of them was so excited I was willing to look at the project. He goes, Pablo, he said, I have a gift for you. I said, really? What's your gift? And he hands me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old child on his phone. He said, this is Princess. She's still a virgin. We just took delivery of some. She's my gift. And he started talking about these horrible things. Now, in the movie, I was pushing back against Jim Caviezel, saying, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And the only way I was convinced is he gave this envelope to my driver. And in this envelope was this picture of this 11-year-old girl named that they called Princess. She was kind of the focal point of the movie. And that was the time that I decided, you know what, I'll go help. In real life, I was already there. I was in Cartagena, Colombia. I was face to face with traffickers, but that was the very first time that somebody that I had seen what I knew was a trafficked child, as he showed me his phone. And that solidified my commitment to dedicate my resources to eradicating that evil.
Wow. And I guess at the time that this truly happened in real life, nobody knew this would become a major motion picture that would shatter some of the things that we didn't know about sex trafficking, and that would expose the evil. Like, that wasn't known for some time, I guess.
I had no idea. I had no idea what trafficking was. I mean, I lived in this opulent bubble, right? When I got the phone call from the Homeland Security agent, when I got that phone call, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was at this opulent hotel. I was raising millions of dollars from multi-billion-dollar families for my investment fund. I was in this bubble, completely oblivious of the world outside. And when he called me and he said, Paul, come as a wealthy business owner. I'm looking down. I have $2,000 cufflinks on, right? At the time, my suit I was wearing cost more than my first car when I was a teenager. And I said, well, how do I dress? He goes, dress as a flamboyant businessman. I'm like, okay, yeah. And I had no idea what to expect. And when I got there to Cartagena, we walked in. I had these two bodyguards. They were former Navy SEALs, big dudes, right? And they're my real bodyguards and my show bodyguards. So the traffickers were thinking, this guy can really fund my project. And we walk in, and I was expecting to see guys with tattoos on their cheeks and three earrings in their noses, gang members. The first trafficker I met was a businessman in a polo shirt, clean cut. The second one was a beautiful woman running this fake modeling agency and trafficking these children. And I realized over the 70 plus missions over the last 10 years that I've done, the common thread wasn't tattoos on their face and earrings. The common thread between all of these traffickers was arrogance and greed and lust. Every single time. It was this arrogance of seeing themselves as more important than another human being. And in that case, the children, and this greed where their bottom line, their pocketbook was more important than any of the suffering that was happening from their victims. And then, of course, lust was something that every one of our perpetrators that we arrested as well, and I'm just going to go there with this audience. I'm just going to go there because we've got a preliminary Christian audience. Almost everybody, including good religious folk, almost everybody has seen pornography. Just because you've seen pornography doesn't mean you're going to become a pedophile. But I will say this, every single one of those guys that we arrested started out with a hardcore addiction to pornography. The very second that we take a woman from a divine feminine to an object, we start playing in that same energy as those traffickers. You're saying, I don't do anything with children. I just look at, no, it's objectification. It's making another human being a commodity in some way in your mind. And that creates a situation where many times guys need something a little bit harder to have that same fix, just like a hardcore drug. And for some of them, harder is a little bit younger, or maybe rape videos or whatever else. It's harder core stuff. And pretty soon they're fantasizing about things they wouldn't even be attracted to 5 years ago. And then they're acting out on these horrific fantasies. So as we're really looking at how to fix this problem, fixing this problem is not going and being a bunch of Rambos and rescuing the kids in Colombia. Fixing this problem is going home and hugging your kids and making sure that they've got a good relationship with you and with God. This is vital. And people say, well, how's that going to fix it? Well, the majority of trafficking doesn't happen like what you saw in the movie. Yes, those things happen, right? But a healthy family with good relationship with the kids, like what you saw with that father and the princess, and traffickers taking them and putting them on a shipping container to another country. Yes, that happens, but it's very seldom. The majority of children who are trafficked sleep in their own beds at night. Now let that sink in for a minute. You're like, oh wait, I thought that how are they trafficked? No, you need a relationship with your children where they can very comfortably come to you and say, hey, you know what, Mom, I don't like it when you tell me that I have to hug Uncle Harry because when he hugs me, he touches me weird, or I don't like going to that friend's house because her brother hits me on my butt every time. Or our babysitter is showing us pornography and she says we should trust her more than you. These are grooming behaviors. These are things that you need a relationship with your kids where they can very comfortably come to you and say, hey, this thing happened during lunch at school, and I feel, and have make them not feel like it was their fault or carry on this shame. But more important than that, and sorry, I'm just rambling here, but I'm talking about big picture fixing this problem, right? For years, after seeing children being trafficked firsthand, I made this commitment. I'm going to dedicate my life and my resources to eradicating this evil. When I was sitting on this chair, like I am right now, and there was this little 11-year-old girl standing up, she wasn't much taller than I was sitting down. And all I could see in her eyes was fear. I was eye to eye level with her as I was sitting down. And I made a commitment to myself and to God and to that child that I would figure out how to fix this. And for 10 years, I participated in and led over 70 missions in 15 countries. I threw a whole bunch of money into the movie and other foundations, etc. And last year, I looked at the numbers. This is before the movie came out. I looked at the numbers and realized there's more children being sold today than there was 10 years ago. And I looked in the mirror and I said, Paul, if your goal is to eradicate this, you're not doing a very good job, right? Because every time we pulled these 20 children out of hell and got them back to their families, every time, if not enough was being done to fix the demand, then another 20 or more children were being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell to fill that demand. So what we have to ask as good Christians, we have to ask this question, okay? Where is it coming from? Okay? If you imagine the links on a chain, right? The Child Liberation Foundation the logo has a big chain it's broken in the middle. And our goal is to break the chain of trafficking. Well, if that's the goal, we have to look at the links of the chain and ask ourselves, okay, this very end link, this is the abuse of a child. We don't want anybody to ever get even close to that. But what's the next link? Maybe child pornography, maybe hardcore pornography. Maybe the next link is just regular. Maybe it's low self-esteem and anger issues. Maybe it's somebody who dealt with childhood trauma themselves. So here's the Christ-like answer. This is going to make people mad, okay? But I'm just going to go here. People ask me, Paul, how can you go face to face with people selling you children and not have them see the hatred and the anger in your eyes? And my answer is this: I don't hate them. People are like, oh, they're selling you children. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm putting my life in danger to ensure they never hurt innocents again. But what if we could go back 5 or 10 years before they ever crossed that bridge, before they ever went down that road, and said, what is going on in your life right now that makes you think that it's okay to cause that kind of harm on another human being, especially a child? Here's the thing. Almost every one of the perpetrators and the traffickers were abused themselves as children. And it's not just somebody growing up and 45 years old, they decide they're going to go to Colombia and rape a 12-year-old, right? It starts with them passing on that trauma in their own homes, in their own neighborhoods. So we as good Christians have to say, okay, what do we need to do from a compassionate standpoint to fix this problem? We don't have a time machine. We can't go back. And those guys have already crossed that line. They're wasting my oxygen, right? They need to be put in a position where they're not able to hurt children. But what we do have is hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people who at some time in their childhood experienced this kind of trauma in their own homes, in their own neighborhoods. And if we can give them the help and the love and the healing that they need, the chances of them passing on that trauma to another child goes way, way down. If they don't get the help they need, 1 in every 3 will become a contact offender.
What a tool of the enemy to destroy people's lives. And going against it, I guess it's no wonder that you had so much backlash even against the movie. I was surprised that something as important as sex trafficking, which everyone pretty much pretends to be socially conscious of, they really came out against the movie last year.
Yeah, I think that it was very much a revealing factor. You know, these people who we wonder, you know, is there an alternate agenda with Disney? You know, there's all kinds of, no, Disney's good for kids. No, Disney's teaching your kids horrible things. And, you know, oh, big media, you know, they're on our side and Hollywood's on our side. And all these guys, they really are, they want us to help to raise healthy kids. Well, as soon as when we first finished the movie, this was more than 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, 5 years before it came out, the movie was completed. It was ready to go. And we could not get distribution. Here's what happened. Fox International had worked with us in Colombia and doing some filming there, and they had the distribution rights. Well, before the movie was completed, Disney bought them out. And Disney would not allow it to be distributed. We're like, are you kidding me? This movie saves kids. It saves kids, right? We have to figure out how to buy out their contract at a premium. And then even after that, we ended up having another former Disney executive come in and tie up the movie. He said, oh, I'm gonna take this to the world for you. I'll take care of this. Those guys couldn't do it, but I can do it, right? I'll raise $20 million. I'll take it to the world. He tied it up for another year. Not $1 was brought in for distribution. It was just a tactic to hold it down. And then after that, we got shut down everywhere. The only way that we were able to bring this film to the world is a grassroots effort with the same distribution company that brought us the TV series Chosen. So I'm sure that you've seen the TV series Chosen, The Life of Christ. If you haven't,
loved it.
Every good Christian needs to watch that TV series.
It's
It's so
awesome.
beautifully done. And Angel Studios already had a solid foundation with so many good families with conservative values that were able to take this movie to the world. I tell people this movie came to the people by the people. The financiers behind it wasn't big Hollywood. It was just regular Joes like me, right? The people who finally took it and distributed it to the world wasn't big Hollywood. It wasn't the traditional routes. It was social media. It was good people saying, no, this is something that needs to be known.
Right. And ultimately, how much did this movie gross after all of this hardship?
Oh, it's doing well, and it's continuing to do well. We did over $200 million in the US. Now, realize we only had a $14 million budget, right? So 200 million is massive. But more important than the grossing dollars is the number of eyeballs that got to see it, the number of hearts that were changed, the number of people who went home and hugged their kids tighter and are more aware of the internet and things that put their kids at danger, et cetera. And so that's what's the most important. And then beyond the US, we're continuing to grow. We're over 250 million now with the film. So it's doing exactly what it was supposed to do, creating a global movement.
You know, what I loved was how you guys struck the exact right balance of having to show the depravity, but not hurting anyone's eyes or, you know, too deeply wounding like what goes on. You didn't need to show anything in order for the message to get across of what was happening to children. And was that something that you strove for in creating this movie? Was how do we hit that balance?
Yeah, in fact, the idea of that balance came way before we picked the final team. That's one of the reasons why in our back and forth communications with Sony and Lionsgate and Paramount and others, we chose not to go that direction. They wanted so much control that they could have brought, it's a difficult subject and it has to be handled carefully. And the reason we chose the group that we did, Alejandro Monteverde is the director and is brilliant at creating a cinematic production of something that is difficult to talk about. And the reason why we chose him, he did two films that I was super impressed with. One was called Bella, and Bella is on abortion. And there are thousands. In fact, they received over 6,000 letters from mothers who decided to keep their child after watching that movie, Bella. So again, difficult subject to be able to take to the world, but they did such a beautiful job that it was super impactful. They did another one called Little Boy that's all on the subject of faith. And it was so beautifully done. After I saw the movie Little Boy, I went to some of the other guys on the team and I said, I think we found what I call Team Mexico, right? These were Mexican artists that just did such a beautiful job, and they were men of God, and who had the same principles that we tried to live our lives by, and they did such a beautiful job.
So, do you think the outfall? Thank you very much for your time. We'll let you go, we promise, because I know probably people are showing up at your door or whatever, but. Do you think that the greatest outfall of this is that more people, awareness came, and maybe laws can be put in place to actually help the kids?
Absolutely. The purpose of the film is creating a conversation. And it's important that that conversation is either the one that the parents need to have with the children, or that constituents need to have with their political leaders, or the conversations within the political system itself, so that policy can be changed and kids can be saved. I can't tell you how many operations that we did in different countries that the laws of that country were so skewed. We had one where our operators went in and these traffickers were offering 17, 18-year-old girls. And our operator simply said, knowing that these guys had access to others, they said, do you have any that are younger? Well, that entire case was thrown out. These guys brought 12-year-old children that were being trafficked, but the case was thrown out because it was extortion, because they asked for 12-year-olds. They were already selling 16-year-olds. They already had the kids. So we had to be super careful in each country. And then we had some countries where they mandated that these 9, 10-year-old children actually saw the money changing hands and heard the conversation of these guys saying what these children are willing to do. We had undercover cameras set up. Why the crap do you need to traumatize these children more and making them testify in court against these traffickers? No. There's better ways to do this without re-traumatizing the children. And so these were all things that transpired over the last 10 years. And now that the movie's out, now we can have those hard conversations with political leaders, with religious leaders, with families, saying, what do we really need to do to keep the kids safe?
Good for you. Well, I just thank you for leaving us with a movie that had such an incredible ending. Like it was so exciting. You were rooting so hard for them to get away, and your heart was beating, and it was epic. And you weren't traumatized. You were like, yeah, the good guys win. Like the good guys really win in this movie. And I guess that's the message, is the good guys need to win because this is for the kids. I thank you for doing what you've done. Final question, any more movies ahead of you?
Yeah, there's a lot. We've done so many missions that there's a plenty of content. I will say this, the downside of Sound of Freedom is what I call the savior complex. There's only one savior, and He's not one of the guys in the movie, right? We're all regular dudes that are out there making a difference. Fighting child trafficking is not one person or one group. It's something all of us need to do to come together. In fact, we had dozens of operators and 8 different rescue missions that we brought together as part of the storyline for Sound of Freedom. And so the jungle scene at the end, that was an entirely different country, an entirely different team, right? It was a little boy his father was a pastor, and he was kidnapped in front of the church house of that country. And so, but we brought all these stories together so that the audience could really see what's going on.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. So you have a website if anybody would like to know more or keep an eye on what you're doing, liberatinghumanity.com. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you for all of this. And you have your mission statement on here and regarding protecting, educating, and healing the nation. How amazing that you are taking what God has given you and sewing it back into making this world a better place. We thank God for you. Thank God for your movie. And please continue to keep on producing these. I hope that you work with Caviezel. Again, he is spectacular. Absolutely loved him. So keep up the great work, Paul. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Super grateful.
God bless.